Good morning. It's now 5 minutes past 10, and I would like to call this second virtual hearing of the Joint Select Committee on State Enterprises to order. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Anthony Vera, and I would like to extend a cordial welcome to all participants and to the viewing and listening audience. We appreciate your attendance here today. This is a follow-up inquiry to assess the performance of the Community-Based Environmental Protection and Enhancement Program, CPEP, and its operations. Before I ask committee members to introduce themselves formally, may I just indicate that Member Gopi Skoon has asked to be excused, and Member Leonce is not here as yet. I expect he will be joining us shortly. I will now ask committee members to please introduce yourselves.
Stephen McCrashy, member.
David Lee, member.
Foster Cummings, member.
Good morning and welcome. Laura Lizama Leasing, member.
Thank you. And may I now ask those who will be giving evidence today to please introduce yourselves.
Morning.
Present morning to the chairman and other members of the committee. Derek Ambrose, Deputy Chairman of CPEP.
Good morning to all members. My name is Nicole Gopal Singh, Corporate Secretary at CPEP.
Wulagai Stricker, Senior Human Resource Officer.
And from, do we have the chairman?
So, also have with us the CEO, Mr. Pete Eddy,
Who is virtual?
who has joined us virtually.
Hello, good morning. Pete Eddy, CEO.
Thank you. And do we also have the chairman, Ms. Michael?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And from the Ministry of Finance?
Good morning. I'm Sharon Mohammed, Director of Social and Economic Transformation Acting, Investments Division.
Also, is Ms. Issa there?
Yes, Ms. Melba is her. She's in your room with me.
Thank you. And from the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government?
Good morning, Desiree Baskin. And with me is Beverly Hayward, Planning Officer too.
Thank you. Welcome all again. Before we start the official proceedings, a couple housekeeping matters. Please remember that we are participating in a public hearing, which involves video links, and hearings by electronic means are conducted as though you are physically present. When speaking, please do so clearly and directly, but not too quickly in the event there's a time lag arising. You should look directly into the camera and not move out of its range while the hearing is in progress. Also be mindful of rustling papers and try to avoid multitasking and background noises, such as cell phones ringing while the session is in progress. Time is limited, and we would like to conclude by 12:55. I'll be trying to keep us on time as there is a lot to cover. I would remind participants that we proceed by question and answer. We want to find out information and views from the witnesses, not take up time telling our own views. And I would encourage everyone to keep questions and answers as brief and as focused as possible so that we can maximize the number of persons who have a chance to contribute. Let's talk one at a time, stay on point, and try not to interrupt when someone is speaking. If you want to speak, please use the raise your hand feature. And you can also move the discussion forward by emailing questions and comments. As I mentioned earlier, the purpose of this inquiry is to assess the performance of CPEP and its operations. Participants are reminded that this session offers a forum for you to share your challenges, your disappointments, and achievements, to voice your concerns and to make recommendations. They provide a unique opportunity to increase public awareness, understanding, and support in respect of your operations. This session is being broadcast live on Parliament Channel 11, Parliament Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel. Viewers and listeners can participate by sending comments relating to today's engagement via email to parl111101@ttparliament.org or on our Facebook page at facebook.com/ttparliament or on Twitter @ttparliament. I now invite Chairman Michael to make brief opening remarks and to provide us with some salient information about CPEP. Chairman Michael, I think you may be on mute.
Good morning again to everyone.
I think with respect to the feedback, my understanding is if you have other devices on, perhaps you should turn them off because they're feedbacking. So just Chairman Michael, thank you. Chairman Michael, you're on mute. Could you unmute? Still on mute. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the icon. No, right. Thank you.
Right. Our community-based environmental protection and enhancement program, which is the meaning of CPEP.
Right. Chairman Michael, I think we are getting feedback because speakers may be on. So what I'm going to suggest is perhaps PS Bascom could perhaps make the opening remarks if you wish. We'll come back to you. Thank you. PS Bascom.
Good morning, Chair and members. Thank you very much for affording us the opportunity to contribute to this discussion. The Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government has an oversight responsibility for the CPEP Company Limited. These functions include technical supervision of planning, monitoring and evaluating projects, plans and program implementation of the CPEP Company Limited as laid down in the guidelines of the State Enterprises Performance Monitoring Manual. We focus on issues such as ensuring that CPEP adhere to the sectoral policy guidelines of the Government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, overseeing budgetary allocations for CPEP, communicating policy affecting CPEP, and reviewing strategic plans and annual budgets for submission to Cabinet. Thank you again, Chair and members.
Thank you. Chairman Michael?
CPEP stands for Community-Based Environmental Protection and Enhancement Program, and that's exactly what we do at CPEP to the best of our ability. And the PS would have given a wider scope of what CPEP does and in relation to the local government ministry.
Thank you, Chairman Michael. Okay, so the floor is now open for questions. Member Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Mr. Chairman. And let me introduce myself formally because I was experiencing some earlier technical difficulties. So my name is Wade Mark, and I'm a member of this committee. Mr. Chairman, I would like to direct this first question to the chairman of CPEP. There was an article in the Trinidad Guardian dated Sunday, September 6th, 2020, headlined, "Money Flowing at CPEP." And the story was written by one Curtis Williams. In that story, serious allegations were made as it relates to some radical changes that have taken place at CPEP, inclusive of a new organizational structure, increases in salaries for certain high-ranking managerial office holders, and as well as a change of name of titles. When the chairman was approached by the Guardian to comment on these changes, the chairman denied all allegations that were made at that material time. I would like to ask the chairman, Marilyn Michael, whether she stands by her statements made to the Guardian at that time, which was recorded in the Sunday Guardian of Sunday, September 6th, 2020. Can I ask the chairman of the CPEP to deny or confirm those statements, Mr. Chairman?
In answer to your question, I would carefully say that the headlines you are referring to would have been a direct result of mischief in its request to scandalize the company's reputation.
Would you say at that time, when the allegation was made that there was an increase approved, an increase in salaries and a change of titles to both the general manager and the, I think your secretary or legal advisor, who is now, I understand, your corporate secretary, would you indicate to this committee whether at the material time that decision was taken by the board?
These salary increases that you are referring to have not been implemented. The board has since sent off for authorization by the Human Resource Advisory Committee of the Cabinet as required by the directions given by the PS of our line ministry and the Ministry of Finance.
Could you also indicate to this committee whether at any point in time your corporate secretary Nicole Gopal Singh wrote a letter to the management indicating the changes that have taken place, as well as a new salary structure effective.
I'm not quite aware of that.
No, are you aware or are you not aware?
I'm not aware.
So there is no correspondence that you can produce to this committee where Mrs. Nicole Gopal Singh informed the members of the management team of the new organizational structure.
And I cannot say there is no correspondence, but I am not aware. And if there is, I would have to further investigate and maybe at a later time provide you with some.
Well, can I ask, Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Nicole Gopal Singh to clear the air on this matter?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Mark. So there is a memorandum from my office to the Office of the Senior Human Resource Officer, as I customarily send following all board decisions pertaining to HR-related issues. So there is one such memorandum following a decision of the board to make changes to the organizational structure.
When was that board meeting held?
On the 28th of November, 2019.
Mr. Chairman, through you, can we request copies of those minutes of the board meeting? Because we would need to, as a committee, clarify exactly what would have taken place. Mrs. Nicole Gopal Singh,
Sure.
through the chairman, can you indicate to this committee what was the decision that you had communicated through that memorandum?
So there were multiple decisions that were taken at that meeting, and that memorandum would have communicated the different decisions. Can I send that in writing at a later date?
Can I ask you whether one of those decisions would have been to alter the organizational structure of the company?
Yes, that would have been one of the decisions taken at the time.
Can I further ask whether in that context and framework that we had changed the titles of your general manager to CEO and your good self to corporate secretary?
General manager to CEO, yes. I have always been the corporate secretary. My title was changed from corporate secretary to corporate secretary / head legal.
Just repeat for us.
Sure. The part with general manager to CEO, that was one change. The second change was from corporate secretary to corporate secretary head legal. I have always been the corporate secretary. Yes. So the head legal has been added.
Yes, thank you. Can you further advise this committee whether at that material time a decision was taken by the board to alter the salary structure of both the new CEO as well as the new title corporate secretary / head legal?
Yes.
Could you share with this committee what was the change or what changes that at that time were brought about? In other words, Mr. Chairman, through you, can Mrs. Gopal Singh provide this committee with a comparison of the terms and conditions associated with the post of general manager prior to the salary adjustment, as well as of December, I think 2nd, 2019, and CEO following the salary adjustment of December 2nd, 2019, as well as the adjustment as it relates to the corporate secretary to now corporate secretary head legal. Can you give us an appreciation of those terms and conditions that would change prior as well as after?
I do apologize. I don't have that information before me, but I can submit that information in writing at a later date.
So though the information is not before you, can you tell us, do you have information as to what is the current salary structure of the new CEO as well as the new corporate secretary, head legal?
Unfortunately, I don't have that information before me. Can I supply that information at a later date?
But you can confirm there was an increase or an adjustment to the salary structure of both office holders.
Yes, I can.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask the chairman of this the chairman, Mrs. Marlene Michael of this company, whether as chairman she sat at that particular meeting. And Mrs. Gopal Singh, can you repeat the date of that meeting for this committee again?
Sure, it's the 28th of November 2019.
Yes. Can I ask Mrs. Michael whether she, as chairman of the CPEP board of directors, sat and officiated over that board meeting of the 28th of November 2019?
Yes, I, as the chairman, Marilyn Michael, sat at that meeting.
And you just admitted to us, Mrs. Michael, you are on oath, eh? You just admitted to this committee that you had no knowledge whatsoever. And if you had, you need to investigate because you're not clear on the matters that Mrs. Gopal Singh had just clarified for this committee. Would you want to?
Sorry to interrupt you, Member Mark, but just to point out that Chairman Michael is not on oath.
Well, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Mrs. Michael, would you like to refresh your memory as it relates to what you indicated to this committee? Short.
That was poised to me. Am I aware that there have been increases in salaries? And I said, I am not aware of such. I said, and you have now asked me if I was present at that meeting, and I have just confirmed, yes, I was. However, I also said in my statement a while ago that a decision was taken. However, presently, as I speak with you, that decision has since sent to the current and the department where this committee was established to monitor the conduct of salary increases for state companies. We have since sent off that resolution to that company to be guided, that committee, sorry, to be guided and to receive authorization of such. Yes, it was that, but we have sent that information to the committee to receive authorization or guidance on the matter.
Can you advise this committee that at the meeting of the 20th of November 2019, a decision was taken by the board to increase the salaries of both your new CEO and your new corporate secretary, head legal, but those increases were not effective. Can you confirm?
Yes, I can. Those increases have not been effective.
But can you confirm that a decision was taken by the board to increase those salaries of the two office holders just mentioned?
A recommendation was made by the board. Again, as I repeat myself, we have since sent off that to the relevant department for proper authorization.
Can you advise this committee when that letter was dispatched or resolution was dispatched to the Human Resource Advisory Committee that deals with public sector negotiations?
I cannot remember exactly the date, but I can get that information for you at a further date.
Chairman, Member Mark, may I just, Chairman Michael, in your submissions, note that when you listed the base salaries and the allowances between 2017, 2018, and 2019, they say one thing, but for year 2020, according to your submissions, the base salaries and allowances went up. So can you clarify for us which it is, that it is still awaiting approvals and they have not in fact gone up? Otherwise, you may wish to amend your submissions, or is it that what you have put in the submissions is in fact the situation as obtained at present?
I would kindly ask through the chair that Ms. Bascom answer that question, please. Our PS.
Okay, the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government received a memorandum from the CPEP Company Limited it was dated November 27th, 2020. It was received in the ministry on the same date, and this correspondence was dispatched to the Office of the Chief Personnel Officer, under whose purview the Human Resource Advisory Committee falls, within a few days of receipt. This matter is still engaging the attention of the CPO's office. Thank you.
Chairman Michael, thank you, PS. So according to you, the request has not yet been fully dealt with. It is still under consideration. But Chairman Michael, it is your submission that I am concerned about, because according to your submission, there was a salary increase. So is it that the submission needs to be corrected, or is it that the increase, even though you are waiting for approvals, has in fact taken effect? Can you clarify that for us, please?
Based on your questions, that submission would need to be corrected, because currently there's no salary increase.
Thank you. So I would invite you to make the necessary amendment in due course.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, your mic is, you're muted.
Sorry. Member Mark, I was saying, do you have any further questions, or would you like to do it in the second round? Because I think Member Lee is waiting to make his contribution to the questions.
Mr. Chairman, may I just ask one final question?
Yes, you may.
May I ask through you to the chairman, in light of what the PS has said, that this memorandum was received on the 27th, yet still there was a board meeting on the 28th, giving effect or proposing to give effect to, let me recast that, Mr. Chairman. If there was a resolution submitted to the ministry on the 27th, why did the chairman and the board of directors still pursue a matter that was under consideration via the Advisory Committee on Human Resources at their board meeting on the 28th? And further, the corporate secretary, head legal, sent out a memorandum on that said day after a decision of the board. It is rather confusing, Mr. Chairman, but I will pause at this time.
If I can, Mr. Chair, if I can just clarify, the PS did indicate that the letter was sent on the 27th of November 2020, and the board meeting would have taken place on the 28th of November 2019. So it was, the meeting actually took place 1 year prior, not 1 day after, if that makes sense.
Mr. Chairman, I'll pause at this time.
Thank you. Before I invite Member Lee, Chairman Michael, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around the timing of these correspondences. My understanding is that PS Bascom says the letter arrived in November, but the media story about the salary increases took place in September. So we have a gap there. It appears almost that the request comes after the article retroactively. Can you confirm for us that during that interim period, no increases were actually implemented?
Acknowledged as a board, as the board chairman, and as I speak on behalf of the board, we are not aware of no increases being implemented, I should say.
Okay, thank you. Member Lee?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to pose a few questions in my 10 minutes that has been allotted to me. To CPEP, maybe I would assume could be the CEO of CPEP, Mr. Eddy. Firstly, Mr. Eddy, good morning to you and your team. Could you tell us how many CPEP teams, they used to be known as gangs, I don't want to use the word gangs, but CPEP teams in total is allocated in Trinidad presently?
Morning to you, Dr. Lee. Currently, and you're quite right, we no longer call them gangs, we call them teams. Currently, there are about 324 teams, contractors, and each contractor would have a team of 30 workers.
Okay. Why I pose that question is that during the Standing Finance Committee coming out of the budget in Parliament, we had posed a question to the CPEP who came before the Standing Finance Committee, and we had gotten a list from CPEP recently, and that stated 970 teams in Trinidad, and there was a breakdown. So I was wondering, based on what the number you just gave me of 324 versus 978.
Yeah, Dr. Lee, I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding. You said 978?
Yeah, that is based on the document you would have sent us. And I could give you the breakdown by constituency based on the document you would have sent us coming out of that Standing Finance Committee. Okay. I could give you the breakdown. But you are now saying it's 324. So
we have 324 contractors. What they may have done was check each of the teams that the contractors have. So if they all have 3 teams, that's where your 974 teams will come from the 324 contractors.
Okay, so basically it's 324 contractors, but in total it could be around 978 teams, correct?
Each contractor.
Okay, let me pose another question to you, Mr. Eddy. How are these teams, and I use the word teams in total, the 978 teams are allocated throughout the constituencies in Trinidad, the 39 constituencies?
Yeah.
What is the criteria?
Well, it's really based on the need in the constituencies. As you know, some areas are much larger in terms of what takes place. So we allocate based on that, but certainly in their contracts, we have the ability to move teams to anywhere that we choose. So depending on what is happening in an area, we can actually remove teams or we can put teams in that area. So that's how we manage the business.
Okay, let me pose another question to you. Based on the information that I have in front of me, when I look at the layout throughout the 39 constituencies in Trinidad, in my view, there's a sort of a misallocation of teams. For example, when I look at the marginal constituencies throughout Trinidad, whether it is held by the opposition or whether it is held by the government, there seems to be a very high amount of teams in those marginal constituencies versus constituencies that are heavily land-based. For example, Mayaro has 12 teams, and that's a very heavy land-based area, versus San Fernando West, which has 46 teams allocated to them. When I look at La Joquita, they have 45 teams allocated to them, versus St. Augustine, or even when I look at Naparima, you only have 9. So when I review these numbers, and maybe you can give us, or the committee, what is the criteria really and truly, because it cannot only be based on the layout because there are areas that are very large that seems to have very few teams in it. And I don't want to cast any aspersions on anyone here or even your company, CPEP, Mr. Eddie, but it seems that there's a mismatch between the opposition constituency held constituency versus the government held constituency. So I'm hoping that maybe you can add some clarity and alleviate some of my concerns, because when you look at St. Joseph has 39 teams, and right next door to St. Joseph is St. Augustine, which only has 12 teams. So I'm trying to find the rationale of why the allocation, how it's allocated. And so that's one question that maybe you can add some clarity to me, please, before I go on.
Again, as I said, there are some areas that we have, I suppose, better. And I did answer that answer, I believe, was by the minister at that same meeting you mentioned when we spoke about Miaro, that some better cooperation from the corporation in areas. So it allows us to actually have less teams in those areas. And as I said, I think the main thing for us is, although we would have allocated differently, as you have stated, in some of these areas, the fact of the matter is, as I said, is that we move teams in and we move them out on a daily basis, sometimes as necessary. So we ensure that no constituency actually suffers when we have to do our environmental beautification.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Eddie. Let me ask you another question because my time is very limited. In the constituency of Pointe-a-Pierre, we have 24 teams allocated there, and you rightly say you might move teams in and out.
Yeah.
I'm asking a question as far as Petrotrin is concerned, the compounds of Petrotrin. Is CPEP responsible for cleaning the compound of Petrotrin that, as we know it, as a Pointe-a-Pierre refinery area inside the compound?
Yes, Dr. Lee, we are doing some cleaning inside the refinery area, and actually Heritage is one of the companies that we are looking with, so that we can assist in some of those vast areas that they have in terms of
Is there a cost, or do you charge Heritage for the cleaning of their compound, or is it done part of the normal CPEP community-based work?
Currently we don't, but that's something we're looking at, because if we have to expand in other areas, it may be pulling on our resources. So we are looking at.
While I want to add that certain areas throughout the country, and I'm not only making a plug for Petrotrin, but what is happening is that it is at the detriment of community-based areas throughout the country, not only Pointe-a-Pierre, where I see as a member, a lot of the areas are suffering because I do not see teams really allocated or doing the work that is necessary in those particular constituencies. And maybe they might be spending a lot of time in state organizations that could be charged, or CPEP could charge them, or they could get private contractors to do that work. So I just put that on the table for your company to look into. And the other area, Mr. Eddie, is one other area. Recreation grounds and cemeteries. The CPEP community teams have responsibility for helping out in recreation grounds and cemeteries?
On recreational grounds, we usually do the periphery. Cemeteries are under Ministry of Local Government and the corporations, but we also assist. We work with a number of organizations. We assist the Ministry of Works and Transport. We assist the Defense Force. So there are a number of partnerships and areas that we work with people. But it is stretching our teams, and we will take a look at certainly a suggestion on the petrol.
My final question, Mr. Eddie, is that what is the total number of workers that would be employed by the contractors / CPEP? You have 324 contractors, and what would be the total amount of team members, if I can put it that way, in total throughout Trinidad?
Right. So each contractor would have an average of 3 teams, And in those 3 teams, each team will consist of 10 persons. So we're talking about an average of 30 workers per country.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. That's it for now for me.
Thank you, Member Lee. May I invite Member Lizama Leasing to ask her questions?
Thank you very kindly, Chairman. Good morning again, members. And thank you very much for joining us here at this Joint Select Committee meeting. I'm a little concerned about the organizational structure at CPEP. I know we've had discussions on the remuneration packages a short while ago, and a lot of the information I understand will be sent to us. A lot of the questions that Member Mark would have asked, we are going to get answers in writing. Let me express from the onset that I would have appreciated a lot more ability of the company to be able to answer some of those questions immediately, as opposed to us having to write, because with all due respect, this meeting would have been scheduled some time ago, and I think that a number of the answers should have been prepared for the members. But that said, my concern really is about the organizational structure of the organization, of CPEP. A number, according to some notes we have, or according to what you have submitted rather, a number of the senior officer posts have replaced the line manager posts in the organizational chart. Can I ask you, please, what was the cause for that? What is the reason for it? What are the differences in portfolios from senior officer to line manager rather to senior officer? Can I just ask for that, please? I'm asking this to CPEP in the first instance.
Yes. You're referring to the fact that you said some of the senior officer position that has replaced the manager's position, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's right. So that, again, those were these decisions taken by the board. And certainly it did, if you look at the information that was sent, there was also a reduction in terms of the salary structure.
Sorry, your audio is going. The last thing I heard was deduction.
There was also a reduction in terms of the CPEP total salary amount. CPEP salary amount, total salary amount, based on what you're referring to, the change in name and the change in job description. Is that clear? Are you hearing me?
So is it, I'm hearing you, you're coming and going. When your face is closer to the camera, I can hear you better actually.
Yeah.
I don't know if when you step back, you have audio issues. So can you repeat that for me, please? Thank you.
It's based on your question, change in the name from line manager to the senior officers. That was a board decision that made that allowed us to reduce the cost of running CPEP in terms of the salaries for the organization. And there were slight changes in the job descriptions.
I'm not sure if it's just me, but the audio is really coming and going. Chairman, are you hearing him properly?
No, we're having the same difficulty. Mr. Eddie, could you, one more time, I'm sorry to trouble you, if you could say what you said again, because we lose you at critical bits.
Yes, Chairman, I'm simply answering the question by saying that there was a change in the structure of the organization, and that allowed us to have reduced salaries in terms of the moving from manager to senior officers. Is that clear? Are you hearing that?
Yes.
That's the response that I gave.
Thank you very much. So just to be clear, the change in the position from manager to senior officer was squarely based on the salaries being received and to reduce the payments of salaries?
Yes.
Yes, and this was a board decision taken to approve that?
Yes, sometime ago. Yes.
Yes. Okay. No problem at all. And can I ask the Ministry of Rural Development, therefore, please, thanks, Chairman Eddie, thanks, Mr. CEO, the Ministry of Rural Development, were you in support of that move, of this change in the organizational structure, and did you provide any support to that? And that same question is both for rural development as well as for the Ministry of Finance.
We weren't consulted, we weren't advised, advised after that the date.
Very sorry, you're very soft. So if you can speak a little louder, please. Thank you.
Hello? Hello, good morning, Beverly Hayward. Regarding that question, CPEP, we didn't advise on that change. We were notified of the change to the board meetings and the correspondence that they sent to us for after.
Thank you. So thank you very much. So you would have been advised. Did you send any feedback to them on your thoughts and sentiments, or you just approved it, or you just went with it?
No. Then we go through the process of approval and authorization. So then they have. That's how we send the correspondence to CPU, and we're liaising with CPEP in order to get that process completed.
So that process is still ongoing.
It's still ongoing.
It's still ongoing. Thank you. And can I ask the other ministry, please?
Good morning. The Ministry of Finance does not have correspondence relating to the change in the organizational structure. That will lie with the line ministry. So what we did is we saw it through the board minutes, but not formal correspondence from CPEP on it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mohammed. So I take it when the process is completed at the Ministry of Rural Development, then something will be sent to you. Yes. Can I ask now then, please, the CPEP, insofar as its own accountability and its own, as a state enterprise, its requirement to be accountable and transparent. Can I ask the Ministry of Rural Development, are you satisfied with CPEP insofar as its accountability and transparency and its reporting to you and its mechanisms and frequency and quality of its reports?
As at today's date, there has been a vast improvement in the quality of reporting from CPEP. In fact, in terms of their administrative report, they are up to date. 2019-2020 has been submitted to the ministry for onward transmission to the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago.
Member Lizama, you're on mute.
Sorry, so very sorry. Thanks, Chairman. I realized I was talking to myself. Well, this ends my first line of questioning, Chairman, and I would move on to a next member. And if we come around to a second round, then I will enter again. Thanks kindly.
Thank you, Member. I'm just trying to ascertain whether from the company or from the ministry, is it that these proposals for the restructuring and for all of these changes, are they at the proposal stage still, or have they in fact been implemented and what we are waiting for now is approval retroactively? Can someone confirm for me what the exact position is, please?
Chairman, I think we probably have to provide that in writing. I think that is something that we could get back to you on, to make it very clear as to what is. I think I understand your question, but I think it requires a little bit of internal discussion.
I hear you, but your submissions suggest that these things are actually in effect.
And that's why I said we've operated in this company for many years through various different government on board decisions. So
we are losing you. You're coming and going.
I'm not sure why my audio is like that. As I said, we've operated on board decisions throughout various years in this company as if. So it is something that I think we need to discuss further into and with the line so we can get that. That was clear.
All right, we didn't get you. I'm sorry, we lost a lot there, but can I just get the view of the ministries, please, on this point?
Okay, we have provided guidance to the CPEP Company Limited in terms of the process and procedure to be utilized for changes to the organizational structure or even changes for staff remuneration. Since 2017, actually, CPEP came under the purview of our ministry late in 2015, and in November of 2017, we wrote CPEP. This current board would not have been in existence then, outlining the guidelines. We again wrote them on July 8, 2020, reiterating what we had advised in 2017.
And Ministry of Finance,
Hello. The procedure outlined by the line ministry is the proper procedure to follow. So all the submissions have to go through the line ministry and forwarded to the various committees for approval.
so am I hearing that CPEP may have misstepped by implementing things without the actual approvals of the ministries? Yes?
Well, in this way, I will defer the answer to the line because we are we provide oversight, not oversight over the direct operations.
PS Bascom?
Once their draft proposal has not been implemented, it should not be problematic. So I am hoping that they are waiting on the approval of the Human Resource Advisory Committee before implementing any staff changes, remuneration changes, or structure changes.
All right, thank you. Mr. Eddy, of course, we would appreciate your written submissions to clarify these points that have arisen. I don't want to detain the other members. I think Member Cummings, you may have had some questions.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I know that you have asked for written submissions, but there are matters here that we really can get some answers to. And I just want to get a bit of clarity. Let me just ask PS at the local government ministry, can you give us, Chairman, are you hearing me? Chairman?
Yes, Member Cummings, I'm hearing you.
Okay, please. Okay. So PS, can you just summarize for us and tell us what that correspondence from the ministry and the follow-up correspondence in 2020, basically, what was the advice given to CPEP? I'm not asking you to read the correspondence, just please summarize for us.
Okay, I'll just read the last line. It was dated November 29th, 2017. And it essentially says that all matters relating to payment, salary increases, allowances, bonuses, etc., should be referred to the line ministry for consideration and for onward transmission to the Human Resource Advisory Committee for approval. That was the 2017 memo, and the 2021 reiterated it and actually quoted the State Enterprise Performance Monitoring Manual, section 3112.
Okay, I'd like to go now to the Corporate Secretary at CPEP, please. Corporate Secretary at CPEP, could you clarify whether the changes to the organizational structure regarding the removal of the positions of managers, as Mr. Eddy indicated, that was a cost-saving mechanism, and replacing them with senior officers. Was that decision of the board, has that decision been implemented?
Yes, Pat.
Effective when?
I don't have the exact date before me, but it would have been in around 2018.
2008.
Sure, but we can supply the actual dates in writing at a later date.
And in relation to that very matter, can you give us an idea of what savings were effected to CPEP as a result of that change? I'm not asking for exact figures here, but if the basis of the decision was cost savings, how much did CPEP save as a result of this decision?
Unfortunately, I don't have that type of information. Maybe the CEO might be able to answer that question.
Committee member comments, that's not something that I have at hand either, but that's something that we can easily supply in writing.
Okay, Mr. Eddy, thank you. Chairman, I will come back in.
Thank you. Member Leons, are you there? No? Okay. Member Makashi? All right, well, while we wait on them, I have a couple of questions. In your ministerial response to the committee's 12th report, dated 20th of April 2020, at page 2, recommendation 2.17, you indicated that CPEP company is working towards the completion of its strategic plan 2020 to 2024 within 1 year of this report as recommended. Well, a year has passed. So can you indicate whether CPEP is on track to complete the strategic plan 2020 to 2024 by April 20th, 2021, please?
Yes, Chairman, the answer to that is yes. We are approximately 98% complete with the strategic plan.
So when do you anticipate the completion?
The completion should be within next week, Chairman.
Thank you. Could you provide us with a copy when it is complete? Also, in your ministerial response to the committee's 12th report, you indicated steps were taken to engage the services of an external auditor. Has this process been completed?
Yes, Chairman. If you recall, we had which we reported to the committee on that we had a crash that took place in 2016, then took 2 years to recover the information to it. So currently, we have rebuilt the information. We actually have management accounts from 2015 to 2019, and we expect that the external auditor will begin their work in May of this year.
Can you say who the new external auditor is, please?
PKF, firm PKF is the new auditor.
Thank you. Member Mark, do you have any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much again. I'd like to ask the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Rural Development and local government. The following question for clarification. Madam PS, you indicated that sometime in November of 2017, you had issued guidelines to the board of directors and management as it relates to perks, salary increases, and other allowances. That was sometime on the 29th of November 2020. And you said in in 2017. And then in 2020, it was repeated. Can you guide us again, just remind us on what date in 2020 that was done? The permanent secretary?
I think you're on mute. PS? No.
It was reiterated on July the 8th of 2020.
Now, may I ask both Mrs. Nicole Gopal Singh and the chairman, Marlon Michael, whether they were in receipt of those directives issued by the PS in the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government?
Good morning again. I am not in receipt of either document, either the one dated 29th of November 2017 or the one dated 8th of July 2020.
Can I ask the chairman?
Dated July 2020, the board, it was brought to the board's attention to the line ministry concerning that document. So if I should answer a straightforward question, yes, we are aware since after July 2020, not before.
Permanent Secretary, you in the Ministry of Rural Development, can you clear the air as to when these documents were received by the CPEP company that was issued by your ministry?
Okay, member, both documents were addressed to the general manager. We would not be in a position to say when they received it. We can only say when we sent it. So it may be advisable to ask Mr. Eddy if and when it was received in the CPEP company, because he is the only constant. Ms. Gopal Singh was not employed at CPEP in 2017, and the current board was not there in 2017.
Okay, so Mr. Keith Eddy, could you confirm receiving those documents?
Mark, actually, Ms. Gopal joined the company in November 20.
20 when?
2017.
Okay.
But I am not aware of that document in 2017, and the document in 2020, I received that document in September. I know PS says it was sent in July, but I received it in my office in September.
Okay. Madam PS of the ministry, can I advise that you establish some mechanism? And I would imagine that when these things are being issued, you would in fact have a record showing when they were sent and when they were received. Would you be able to put into effect, given the fact that both Mr. Eddy, well, Mr. Eddy is saying that he never saw the 2017 document. And in case of the 2020, which you sent in July, he only received it in September. Can you take steps to ensure that that gap is filled and therefore you wouldn't have any future confusion?
Okay.
Just echoing Member Mark, PS, when you send important documents of this nature, is it that it's sent by hand-delivered letter or is it sent by mail?
No, the driver drops them.
Okay, so would the driver have a receipt book when it is delivered to have him sign it?
Yes, so we could go back into our records and trace what date it was received. But in terms of the 2020 document, we had a meeting with CPEP in September, and they informed us that they hadn't received the document. So then we resent a copy. So that is why he received the second version of it in September. But
yes, and following on, Member Mark, because sometimes documents are delivered at a desk, but they get lost. They don't arrive at the intended destination. Do you have a follow-up process where you say, well, we haven't received an acknowledgement from you, or do you send now perhaps electronically so that there's an electronic record as to when it was sent and when it was opened?
Okay. Now, when we send a hard copy, we'd also send a soft copy or a scanned copy, but that is at today's date, within recent times. Back then, we didn't used to do that.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt, Member Mark. Continue, please.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask the new chairman, who would not have been there at the time, having regard to the fact that they received it in September, why did the board pursue even proposed new salary increases, as well as changes to titles, inclusive of new allowances, new vehicles for the general manager who is now the CEO? Why would the board still pursue a decision, even though not implemented according to the chairman, in the face of receiving this document in September of 2020 from the ministry permanent secretary? Can I ask the chairman of CPEP to respond to that question?
Committee member Mark, may I just put a little plug in before the chairman answered, before the chairman responds? Member Mark, you hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Yes. What I think the chairman said initially is that they didn't receive the 2017 document, but they did receive the 2020 document. So I think there's a bit of a time lapse. So I will allow the chairman to speak now, but I think there's a bit of a time lapse because the decision was taken in November 2019, and they would have received that document in 2020. So that's just a bit of clarification, but I'll let the chairman respond.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm having difficulty hearing Mr. Eddie. He's definitely having an audio problem. I'm not hearing him. Mr. Eddie, could you repeat?
And Mark, are you hearing me at all?
Yes, I'm hearing you now, but
all right. Let me try and stay closer to the screen, so maybe that will help.
Yes.
Thing is that just before the chairman Michael answers, is that there was a time lapse because she indicated that they received the 2020 document, which was, but the 2017 document she did not receive that one. The change was made in 2019. So I'm saying that there's a bit of a time lapse between when the board made the decision and when they received the document in 2020. But I'll let her respond on it. I hope you heard everything I said this.
Yes, I think I did. Yes. Can I ask the chairman to respond?
Exactly what Mr. Eddie said. I want to say that is correct. We never received the document until, sometime in 2020. Hence the reason I said before that the decision has since been sent to the relevant authority for proper authorization and guidance.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask the chairman or Mr. Eddie, given the fact that the decision, according to your document, was effected on the 2nd of December 2019, that is, the post of general manager was changed from general manager to CEO, as well as the salary was changed from the amount that is quoted here, 40,000 to 61,500 according to your submission. Can you tell us whether between the period when you sought clarification from the line ministry and the effect in terms of the date, the effective date, 2nd of December 2019, was there any increases in salaries for both office holders, namely the CEO and the corporate secretary / head legal? Can I ask the chairman to clarify for us?
As I said earlier, the board is not aware of any increases paid to both the CEO and the corporate secretary / head legal. We are not aware of any such increases.
Madam Chairman, is CPEP, through you, running away from its own written submission, which would have been submitted to this committee? Because it is in black and white before us that effective from the 2nd of December 2019, the CEO post took effect and a new salary with the accompanying allowances, new allowances took effect. Are you running away from your own submission?
Definitely not.
Well, are you claiming ownership of your own submission?
Yes, I was asked by the Chairman Vera, if the document before you all needs to be corrected or adjusted, and I said yes. I spoke in it.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that this matter is very, very serious, and we will probably have to take this a step higher and further. I am not convinced at the moment of what I'm seeing before me and what we are being told by the management. What I would like to ask through you, Mr. Chairman.
But Member Mark, may I suggest that you put the question to Mr. Eddy, whether he received?
Mr. Eddy, may I ask you directly whether you at any point in time during this period that we are examining, and particularly given the effective date that we have been provided in writing that the CEO began to receive his new salary, can you tell this committee whether at any point in time you began to receive your new salary and it was stopped for further approval from the relevant Human Resource Advisory Committee? Can you advise this committee?
Member Mark, I have not received any increase. However, if you go through the information that would have there were parts of the decision that was implemented, because if Member Gopal Singh is actually the head of the legal department, and my title was changed to CEO.
Mr. Eddy, I'm not hearing you. I don't know. You'll probably have to go by Mrs. Gopal Singh, because she's coming across very clearly, but you are breaking up, so the audio is very bad where you are. Very, very bad. And therefore, for record purposes and for the public consumption, they are not hearing what you are saying. So, Mr. Chairman, may I suggest, with your leave, that if you can ask Mr. Eddy to sit close to Mrs. Gopal Singh, because her audio is coming across very clearly, and we are.
And perhaps, Member Mark, you might want to put the question directly to Ms. Gopal Singh as well.
Maybe better. I think Ms. Gopal Singh will give the same answer I did. So maybe we can ask Ms. Gopal Singh to just respond if my response wasn't clear.
Yeah, Mrs. Gopal Singh, can you help this committee clarify?
Sure. Good morning again. Is it possible that you can repeat the question for me?
No, I am asking Mr. Eddy, and maybe I can ask your good self, whether at any point in time during this imbroglio, whereby your memorandum that was issued after this very important board meeting, as you said, on the 28th of November 2019, whether between 2019, the 28th, and the effective date of the 2nd of December 2019, whether you were in receipt of any increases between that period, 28th of November 2019 to the 2nd of December 2019. Your good self and Mr. Eddie.
Sure. Okay, so I can confirm that neither Mr. Eddie nor myself have received any actual benefits. However, I do wish to state that the changes have been implemented. We are just awaiting, but no benefit has been received. If I can defer this question further to the senior HR officer, maybe she would be able to provide more clarification on this matter.
Well, before you go to the HR officer, can you clearly air on what you have just said? That
So what Mr. Eddie was attempting to explain was that the changes would have actually taken effect, and he did explain that his title has been changed from general manager to CEO, and I, of course, would now also be the head of the legal department. So the changes have been implemented, but no benefit has been received to date.
All right, okay. And you said that somebody will clarify further. Who is the person?
So I'm saying if further clarification is needed, then the senior HR officer will be able to provide clarification on this.
And would you say that this decision that was taken by the board not to pursue any implementation as it relates to benefits arose directly out of that article in the Guardian of September the 6th, 2019?
I believe that the senior HR officer might be able to provide further clarification on that issue.
Sure. To the chair, Senator Mark, can you kindly repeat your question so in the capacity of the chairman, I will attempt to answer, please.
Yeah. No, what I'm asking is that whether this article by Curtis Williams on Sunday, September the 6th, 2020, in which he had indicated that there was implementation of the new salary structure, the new titles were effected, and a new organizational chart was operationalized. Would you say as a result of this expose in the Guardian that prompted the board of directors and management to backpedal on the implementation of the benefits?
No, it was on the advice of the letter we received from the line ministry indicating the steps as a board that we were able to proceed, that we required, and we proceed with that directive.
And again, can you clarify when that was received?
I cannot readily, but sometime after the 2nd of September 2020 for sure, because that's when the letter was sent. And yes, so sometime after 20th of September 2020.
Mark.
That was 2020, you said?
Yes.
Although the decision was taken in 2019.
And Senator Mark, to the chair, as I said before, we will guide, the decision was taken. However, we were guided by a letter that we received or made, a letter that was made to our knowledge of being sent to CPEP. And the letter is what would have initiated the board taking that decision to be guided by what the letter said. So we have since sent off the board's decision for further authorization to the relevant line ministry.
Yeah, can I ask, Mr. Chairman, the representative from the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division the following question. I would like to ask whether the Ministry of Finance, Investment Division is satisfied that the changes made to the CPEP organizational chart and proposed compensation packages were done with established procedure for such amendments. Can I ask, is it Mrs. Bosco? Who is the person from the Ministry of Finance, Investment Division? Can you clarify for us?
The responsibility for oversight with respect to the changes in the salary structure lies with the line ministry.
So the Ministry of Finance, corporation sole, doesn't have any role whatsoever or no kind of input as it relates to giving its advice on any changes that is being proposed to a state enterprise organizational reorganization in terms of chart and structure. So you just receive, is the Ministry of Finance Investment Division a mailbox, or do you play an active role in ensuring that taxpayers' monies are properly utilized?
The Investments Division, we provide oversight and monitoring of the state enterprise sector, and we are guided by the State Enterprises Monitoring Manual. The role of the line ministry is oversight of the operations of the company. Therefore, those operational issues would have been gone between the company and its line ministry.
So would the Ministry of Finance not have access to the organizational chart and new structure that was being proposed? Or
no, we didn't.
Would you be left out?
Well, we don't have a record of the organizational chart being sent to us for review.
But would you agree with me, given your very critical role of oversight in terms of the investments division of a state-owned enterprise, that you ought to have had sight of such a organizational structure?
Well, yes, I agree that we should, and we would work with the line ministry on the matter.
Can I therefore ask
Member Mark, if I may, just to piggyback on your line of inquiry, may I ask the company, how do you get money? Do you earn revenue through your project teams, or you subsidized entirely by the government?
We get subvention from the government. We get subvention from the government, Chairman. We do have a business development unit, but that does not earn enough to be able to support operations.
Right. So may I take it that without the government subvention, the company would not be able to function effectively?
That's correct.
I'm not hearing you.
Correct.
Okay. So in the same Guardian report that we were referring to earlier, there was reference to a particular legal opinion. And in that legal opinion, it said that the line ministers, and we have just heard that the line minister is responsible for, the line ministry is responsible for oversight and monitoring. It said in that legal opinion that the line minister's interference was preventing the board from using the company's resources optimally. The legal opinion reads, a direct intervention by the line minister in the affairs of state enterprises in a manner that fetters the discretion of the board of directors is tantamount to making the line minister de facto or shadow director. My question is, does the company have a problem with the reporting relationship as set out in the performance manual? And does the company believe that the line minister's intervention in the company's affairs is a fetter on the board?
Those questions, if you're asking me, Chairman, is no. I'm not sure who you're posing the question to.
No, I'm posing the question to the company, whether CEO, chairman, corporate secretary. I'm just trying to get an understanding of the company's position with respect to the oversight and monitoring by the line ministry and the performance manual.
I speak on behalf of the board as the chairman, and the answer is no. We do not have a problem.
Management does not have a problem either.
Thank you. Member Cummings, you have some questions?
I have one more question, Mr. Chair.
Oh, sorry, Member Mark, and then Member Cummings is waiting.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, can I ask through you for the company to make that legal opinion that was quoted in, is that legal opinion, a document that came from CPEP, Mr. Chairman?
Well, Member Mark, the legal opinion may be a privileged document. We could ask the company if they're willing to share it, but I'm not sure if we can insist on it. I don't know if Ms. Gopal Singh has a position on that.
Mrs. Gopal Singh?
So this legal opinion is in, the chairman is in the possession of this legal opinion. So this is the legal opinion that was requested by the board of directors. So the chairman, on behalf of the board, is in possession. So as long as she feels comfortable with sharing it.
We're not hearing you clearly.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, does the chairman and your good self have a difficulty in sharing that legal opinion with this committee?
I don't have a difficulty. No, I don't. I'm not sure with the chairman.
At the moment, I am not quite sure what are you referring to. I am aware of a legal opinion, but as I said before and earlier, that the board has taken a decision to be guided by the CEMP manual.
Yes, we understand what you have said, but we are saying there's a legal opinion.
Yeah, but Member Mark was just asking whether the company would be willing to share that opinion with this committee, please.
I am not aware of it. Well, right now I don't have the opinion available, so I am unable to share.
You mean at a later date? At a later date, because I supply it at a later date. That's what he's asking.
Am I hearing that it can be shared with us at a later date, Mrs. Gopal Singh?
Oh, I was just explaining the question to the chairman. So I don't have an issue supplying it at a later date. Yeah.
Yes. Well, the committee will formally write requesting a copy of it. Thank you.
Right,
Member Mark, are you through or?
Yes, I'm through, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Member Cummings.
Thank you, Chairman. This is going to be my final intervention. Having a little difficulty reconciling some information here. The board took certain decisions in relation to organizational changes, and I have no difficulty in principle with the changes that were made in relation to the CEO's position and the corporate secretary position. I have no difficulty with that really. Since get improves security and changes in the direction of the company that may require certain expertise. And we have been informed that for the implementation of the remuneration part, that they are waiting the requisite approvals. Now, Chairman, however, two things. One, the actual changes have been implemented, both at the senior level and at the executive level. Now, at the executive level, this change from managers to senior officers, there's not enough detail. There might be very well Mr. Eddy has provided that is a cost-saving mechanism. I don't know if there's any additional information. I want to ask CPEP to please provide the committee in writing the rationale for these changes, and therefore what would be, for instance, the role and responsibility of some of the officers, both the previous structure, which involved executive managers, and the current structure, which involves senior officers. Give us a comparison in terms of what are the roles, the duties associated with these positions, and the qualifications for these for the functionaries. And I want to also note again that the decisions in terms both at the CEO's level and the legal officer and at the executive manager, those decisions have already been implemented. So what are we really waiting for in terms of direction from the committee that this information was sent to? What is really being awaited? Just to deal with the remuneration part? Ministry of Local Government. Yes?
Approval from the Human Resource Advisory Committee. We do not want to preempt their deliberations on the matter and set a date for if they approve it. Seeing that the matter has been implemented since 2019, the CPO may be placed in a difficult position in terms of the date of the approval, if it's granted.
Well, that is exactly what I'm saying, Piers. That's what I want to get some clarity on. The actual decisions have already been implemented. What has not been implemented is the remuneration aspect of it. So yes, I understand the point you say. That's exactly my point that I'm making. What happens now? Because assuming the CPO says no, there is no approval to move ahead with this. What position is the CPEP company put in? How does the ministry intend to treat with such a scenario?
Assume the last line of our 2017 memo, which CPEP has not received, said, under no condition should increases in salary, allowances, bonuses be made without the approval of the Human Resource Advisory Committee. So in the event that the CPO says no, then CPEP will not have a big back pay bill to pay.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Piers. Back to you, Chairman, please.
Member Cummings, you're through?
Yes, I am, Chairman. Yes,
okay, thank you. Member Lee, I see your hand raised.
Yes, Chairman. Let me just pose some, for my own clarity, coming out from Member Cummings and Mr. Mark's line of questioning. I want to ask whether it is Mr. Eddy or Ms. Gopal Singh. The decision by the board was done on the 28th of November 2019 as far as title changes and remuneration, whether one wants to say it was a recommendation, etc. The question I would like to ask firstly, because the title changes seem to be in effect, because Mr. Eddy is now the CEO as far as his title, and Ms. Gopal Singh is corporate secretary / head of legal. First question, when were those title changes put in effect? I pose that question to either one of them, Mr. Eddy or Ms. Gopal Singh. When those title changes were put in effect?
I believe it was done, Member Lee, on the 2nd December 2019.
All right, 2nd of December 2019. And that would have been coming out of the board minutes of the 28th of November 2019, correct?
Correct.
question I would like to pose before the article came out in September 2020, between December 2019 to September 2020, were any remunerations coming out of that recommendation of the board minutes of 28th of November 2019 put in effect, and it was put in effect and was issued, but when it was rescinded in September based on an error, and maybe individuals were asked to repay remunerations that they would have gotten without approval. I want to put that on the table as a yes or no question. If any remuneration that was done based on the recommendation of 28th of November 2019 paid in error and they were refunded.
No. Sorry, repeat the question.
The question I'm asking, Mr. Eddie, is that you did the title change in December 2019 based on the board minutes of the 28th of November 2019. The board also recommended remuneration changes, both to the CEO position, also the CorpSec/head of legal. I am asking a question. If any of those remunerations were put in effect from December 2019, and when it was not, and it was when the official approval was not, or when one realized that they had to get official approval based on the 2017 memo, that it might have been paid in error and it was refunded by individuals or management of the company? No, the answer. Okay. My second question, I want to turn over to something else, Mr. Eddie. On the Ministerial Response to Committee 12th report dated April 20th, 2020, CPEP had sought approval from the line ministry about contracting 50 waste removal operators to service Trinidad. What is the status of that? Is that in place? Was that given approval?
Dr. Lee, no, we are still waiting on approval of those 50 waste removal.
And what was those waste removal operators? What was their role? I wasn't there at that time, so could you help me?
Usually when the contractors are finished gathering up the waste, they had assigned waste removal operators. They pick up the waste and take it to the dump sites.
Correct. And who's doing that role right now? Who has been doing that?
We are doing some of it with limited resources, and we get help from.
Correct, and you get help from corporations, the corporations. And where am I going with that, Mr. Eddie, is that the corporations have been complaining that because of their lack of funding and their lack of human resources, putting a strain on the corporations to pick up and remove the waste that CPEP teams would have provided in their work. And could you inform this committee if something is going to rectify that, because the corporations are also under pressure trying to clear up the waste, and they have made an appeal to see what assistance can be given to them, whether So I'm looking for some sort of clarity in respect of waste removal that the teams do when they're finished, when they complete their work.
Yeah, what would certainly help the situation is the approval of the waste removal operators. We are, we do get help, as I said, from some of the corporations. Some of them, as you have indicated, cannot provide the help because they themselves are stretched. So once we have the approval, and I know that the line ministry and the minister is looking at it. Once we have that approval, it certainly would help the problems.
Okay, that's it for me, Mr. Chairman Vera. Thank you, Mr. Eddie.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. In your ministerial response to the committee's 12th report at page 11, it was indicated that CPEP was in the process of settling 4 health sector initiative matters. Can you give us an update on those matters, please?
Yes. As the chairman recalls, this was a number of contractors. I believe it was about 19 contractors. And the issue was that we had claims fairly significant claims. We were able to settle, I believe it's about 15 to date, with savings of about $50 million. And we expect that the next 4 will be settled with a very similar number in the near future, to a total of about $100 million in savings.
Thank you. And in your report at page 12, you indicated that CPEP, via a memorandum dated the 23rd of March 2020, sought the approval of the line ministry to purchase vehicles for waste removal, and you sought approval from the line ministry and corporation Seoul for the contracting of the 50 waste removal operators to service Trinidad.
Yeah. Yes. One of the questions Dr. Lee just posed, which is the waste.
Yeah.
We do have Asian equipment, Chairman. So we did apply to change that Asian equipment. We still have not. We did have the approval done, but we still don't have the funding as yet. So what we have done is really increased our maintenance.
I lost you there.
Yeah, I said we do have approval for the vehicles, but we don't have the funding just yet. So what we are doing in the meantime is improving the maintenance of the current set of equipment that we currently have.
Right. And if when you get those vehicles, that would take the pressure off the corporations, the municipal corporations that Dr. Lee was expressing concern about. Is that it?
Yeah, well, it's not so much take the pressure of the corporations, because this is work that with the removal operations and operators in the past that gave us a lot of leeway being able to do that. I think with new equipment, it would help. Certainly, it would increase our capacity to pick up more. But at the end of the day, I think the removal operators would certainly add significantly to what we have to do, because we do cover all of Trinidad in terms of our work. And in some areas, it's very significant waste that we pick up.
Right. And on that very significant waste that you pick up, you had also indicated that you would conduct a cost-benefit analysis to determine whether it was cost-effective for you to have your own incinerator. Has that analysis been completed?
We did. Well, I've not totally finalized it. The incinerator was more for the dead animals, Chairman, that that aspect of the company was looking at. It is not cost effective for us to have our own. We're still going to have to depend on the ones that are in existence.
Right. But of course, you would appreciate that the disposal of waste, particularly in this environmental and climate change scenario, is a challenging aspect. Are you comfortable with the way in which you collect and dispose of waste?
Yeah, in general, yes, but we also are looking at a composting facility, which would totally help in that, instead of all of that going to waste, because in some instances now we do provide the grass in the rural areas to farmers. But if we're able to do compost, it's another business opportunity for the company.
Thank you. I have no further questions. I don't know if any other members.
Yes, Mr.
Member
Chairman.
Mark?
Yeah. May I ask, Mr. Chairman, through you, whether the CPEP company had taken legal action against the Trinidad Guardian? And if so, is the action still being pursued?
Oh,
May I ask Mr.
no.
Eddy?
The answer is no. The answer is no, member.
Okay. May I also ask whether, given your ministerial response to our Committee 12 report dated April 20th, on page 2, recommendation 2.17, you indicated that CPEP is working towards the completion of its strategic 2020 to 2024 plan, and that should be done within 1 year of the report. Now, given all that almost a year has passed.
Member Mark, I think that question was asked and answered already.
Oh, you asked that question. May I also clarify, and maybe you can advise me, the question about NIB. Did anybody ask a question about NIB, Mr. Chairman?
No, that was not asked.
May I ask, there was based on our follow-up inquiry, where we had some problems with CPEP observing and paying monies to NIB on behalf of the workers. There was an undertaking that the CPEP would directly get involved and see if they could pay NIB monies on behalf of the workers via direct payment on behalf of the contractors, that is. Has that matter been resolved? And what is the position in terms of statutory deductions as it relates to the NIB? Can anyone provide us with guidance on that?
Member Mark, I'm happy to answer that. That's really a milestone for the company. As you recall, we had a number of contractors, legacy issues mostly, that were what we call non-compliant, that was not paying NIS payments, and which caused employees problems. We have now been able to implement our software program that allows us to pay as an agent directly to the NIB. Therefore, we have basically eliminated the issue of non-compliance, except for the legacy ones that we are dealing with. So we probably have about close to 90% compliance in terms of the contractors now.
Well, that's very good to hear, Mr. Eddy. And Mr. Chairman, I don't know if this question was asked or answered. That has to do with swim call. Did anyone ask that question, Mr. Chairman?
No, it's not been asked.
Well, may I ask Mr. Eddy the following? In your memo, in the ministerial response to our committee's 12th report, dated the 20th of April, on page 13, recommendation 2.41, the company indicated that it had engaged the services of SwimCom to provide portable toilets at 10 sites for a period of 6 months. First of all, I'd like to clarify, was this arrangement continued past the initial 6-month period? 2, are there plans to extend this provision to the remaining work sites? And 3, what is the monthly cost of this service?
In answer to your question, we did begin that pilot project in January. Problem became in March when we fell into the pandemic. We had to suspend it. We have actually gone back to implementation of those 10 sites, and we are planning to extend it to the rest of the program. As far as the monthly cost goes, Member Mark, I don't have those numbers in front of me, but certainly we can provide that to you in writing. I think you're on mute.
Member Mark, I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, can we, I'm trying to get clarification, what has the ministry, that is the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, been doing to support CPEP's implementation of recommendations by this committee? Can I ask the Permanent Secretary to respond?
Okay, member, in terms of the proposal for the structure and the salary increases, that has been sent to the CPO for the Human Resource Advisory Committee to look at. In terms of the request for purchase of new vehicles, as Mr. Eddy said, that has been approved, and I would urge CPEP to include it in their 2021-2022 draft estimates of expenditure, so we can seek the approval of the Ministry of Finance for funding for those vehicles. Thank you.
May I ask also, Madam Permanent Secretary, seeing that there has been a number of changes following the organizational reorganization, in which senior officers' posts appear to have replaced rather the line manager posts in the 2020 organizational chart. I wanted to ask, how is the ministry addressing the situation where the board of directors at CPEP have effectively removed the executive management level of CPEP's organizational structure? Can you tell us how the ministry is addressing this matter, where, as I said, senior officers' posts appear to have replaced line manager posts in the 2020 organizational chart? How is your ministry addressing this situation?
Member, the ministry will address that situation upon receipt of the approval or lack of approval from the Human Resource Advisory Committee.
Madam P.S., I don't know if you were following these hearings properly or perfectly, but if I may remind you, we were told repeatedly by Mrs. Gopal Singh that these measures have been implemented. The only measure that has not been implemented thus far are the benefits, salaries, benefits, and other allowances. But in terms of this new executive management structure, this has been implemented. And I'm asking you, as the permanent secretary, how are you addressing this scenario? Because this is now in existence at CPEP. Senior management posts have now replaced the line manager posts that were there previously. Can you clarify? Madam Permanent Secretary?
Yes, Member. We at the ministry, we are in fact following the discussions. And I still reiterate that the org structure and any changes have been sent to the HR committee. So we do not want to preempt the CPO by agreeing or not agreeing with the CPEP Company Limited.
Madam Permanent Secretary.
Member Mark, if perhaps I could help. Perhaps you could ask the company. Member Mark is referring to, in your new organizational chart, the following posts were absent: Manager Finance, Manager Business and Entrepreneur Development, Manager Human Resources, Manager Operations, Manager Corporate Communications. So what happened to the individuals who held those posts? Were they retrenched? Were they demoted? Did they resign?
The individuals are no longer with the company, so they were, I don't know if retrench is the word, but yes, they are no longer with the organization. But I also have to state, Chairman, that in terms of the changes that have been made, it has not affected the company's delivery. And we have a list of achievements that we could put forward. We are running a smooth organization and the work continues as normal.
Thank you. But could you let us know the rationale for removing those line manager posts?
I'll have to go back to the document, Chairman. At this point in time, I think we need to provide, we will provide that to you in writing.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just follow up on what you have asked, can Mr. Eddy indicate what exactly took place with those line manager posts? Were they given a golden handshake and they left the company? Can you tell this committee what it costs the taxpayer for each manager post that would have been given, as I would like to suggest, and you'll have to advise? Were they given golden handshakes? And when you translate these golden handshakes into dollars and cents as it relates to taxpayers' monies, what are we talking about? You must be in a position to give us a figure, and then you can give us detailed information as to what each manager would have received on his or her way out. So can you explain in a very tight summary for this committee what has happened to all those managers, manager posts that the distinguished...
Thanks, Member Mark. I think he's got the point. Ms. Eddy?
Yeah, I did say that, I mean, this happened a while back. I did say that they were given, they were retrenched. So what I can do, I mean, I don't have those numbers at hand, Member Mark, but what I can do is I can provide the information in writing.
And so we will be grateful for that information. And also, if you had all of these managers doing certain functions and duties, and they leave, what happened to those functions and duties? Have they been redistributed? And if so, how?
We have the new management, just in the new management structure, Chairman, we do have senior officers. The roles and functions have been picked up, and we continue to operate and deliver as we've always.
Thank you. Now, Member Mark, I know Member Lizama Leasing has been waiting patiently. Do you have any other questions on this before?
Yeah, one question, Mr. Chairman. Can we ask, Mr. Chairman, can you guide me, because it might be redundant. When Mr. Eddy says that these manager posts have been taken over by new senior positions, are those the same positions that have been given to us in terms of the 2019 structure, where we have senior financial manager, senior marketing and communication officer, senior internal auditor, senior human resource officer, senior operations officer? Are these, Mr. Chairman, the new posts that have now been taken over as a result of the redundancy and or retrenchment of the previous manager posts? I'm trying to get clarification from you, yes, Mr. Chairman, or unless you want to put that question to Mr. Eddy himself.
The answer to that, Member Mark, yes, those positions have been. Yes.
And Mr. Chairman, finally, can I ask through you if they can provide us with the terms and conditions that were enjoyed by each of the managers who have been retrenched, according to Mr. Eddy. And as you asked, Mr. Chairman, if Mr. Eddy can put in writing the rationale for the retrenchment of these manager posts and the creation of the senior manager post, which carries, I would imagine, much more monies in terms of remuneration and other allowances. Can we get that, Mr. Chairman, in writing?
Yeah. Member Mark, the retrench was not my word. I believe it was yours.
No, sir. You just said, go back to the records. You just said a short while ago that the workers,
well, maybe it's the chairman, it's probably the chairman that asked the question initially. But however, it is senior officers, not senior managers. And we did say during the discussions that one of the reasons for that was savings. So their packages are not greater than what was there before. But again, as I said, we will provide that information in writing as the chairman asked before.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Eddy.
You're most welcome.
Thank you, Member Mark. Member Lizama Leasing.
Good morning again, everyone. Thanks very much, Chairman. I actually did not intend to come back into this round of questioning, so thank you very much for this brief intervention, please. Chairman, CPEP's core competency, as I understand it, is to empower communities to protect and improve the condition of the physical environment. We can all appreciate that CPEP is critical on the national landscape, both for the physical protection as well as for stimulating the economy insofar as provision of jobs for small contractors and their employees. And Chairman, this morning I felt as if because of probably challenges in the internal operations or the management structure, or the leadership of the company, we found ourselves discussing that so much and we were barely able, except for Member Lee in his intervention, we were barely able to really touch on the functionality, the audited accounts, etc. of the organization. I know that with the last Joint Select Committee in the 11th Parliament, some recommendations would have been put forward and sent to CPEP. And some of those recommendations, I was not a member of the committee then, but some of those recommendations were really, really excellent. And I would like to know, please, I would like some updates on some of the recommendations that would have been put forward, such as producing CPEP adopting the line ministry's guidance in producing administrative reports that meet the requirements in the State Enterprises Manual, as well as the recommendation to engage in partnerships with other entities such as YTEP, NESC, MIC, etc., to provide training. Have any of those things been explored? Have any of these recommendations been implemented?
Remember, the answer to your question is yes. We have actually quite a number of partnerships. We are partnering with the Ministry of, we are partnering with the University of the West Indies. We have a very strong partnership with the Defense Force. We also are partnering now with the Asa Wright facilities, with the CDA. There's a number of partnerships we are developing. So the answer to that question is yes. The first thing you asked about, could you just repeat if there was something before you mentioned?
One of the recommendations, thanks, Mr. Eddy, one of the recommendations that would have been provided by the Joint Select Committee of the 11th Parliament would have been that CPEP should adopt its line ministry's guidance in producing administrative reports that meet the standard requirement.
The answer to the question is a resounding yes. And we are, as mentioned earlier, we are up to date with our 2019-2020 administration.
Okay, and I know that your server would have crashed at some point last year, and yes, given the fact that the government is on a thrust towards digitization in all spheres of national governance and across the country, can you please give me an update on that, please?
Yeah, we did, as I said, server crashed in 2016, we recovered the information in 18, we have rebuilt the information. We now have we have management accounts from 2015 to 2019, and internal auditor is set to begin work in May of this year.
Okay, thanks very kindly, Mr. Eddy. And Chairman, I do hope that when we receive the answers in writing, that we will probably have an opportunity again to meet with CPEP, because I am a little concerned coming out of today's Joint Select Committee meeting.
Thank you, and I too share some of those concerns. So just to point out, Mr. Eddy, CPEP is today reporting to the Parliament on your administration, on the exercise of your powers, and how you functions. So this is a very serious undertaking, and I have to say that I'm a little concerned about the glaring discrepancy between what you have submitted to us in writing on what you have said today orally. And I'm hoping that in your clarifications, you can perhaps shed light, give some kind of explanation as to why that discrepancy occurred. I also would like to just, before Mr. Member Lee comes on, change the tempo a bit, because I do say always that these hearings are also an opportunity to increase public awareness and understanding and support in respect of your operations. So I just have a couple of questions. What is the biggest challenge facing CPEP at this point, in your opinion?
I think as discussed in terms of our operations, Member Lee would have mentioned the removal of the waste is a big challenge. And certainly our aging equipment is also another one that I will point out. Those to me are kind of the main challenges that we do have one or two safety challenges with our DART unit, because when they have to try and maneuver across the highways and byways of Trinidad, it does pose a safety risk. We've written to the police to provide us with some assistance in that area.
And for the record and the listening public, what would you say are your priorities and concerns at this juncture?
Certainly priorities would be really continuing to educate and make the public aware of how we treat our nation. I mean, we have cleaned several beaches in Trinidad and Tobago with over 4,000 bags of waste being collected, lots of plastics. We have raised our awareness in terms of our social media and stuff, so that public gets to understand that we need to be trying to save the planet and not continue to destroy it. And when we see the kind of waste that we get from our beaches that we frequent and stuff, it's troubling. We have recently cleaned Dean's Bay in Carnage, and for those of us that have been around for a little bit, that's a bay that the Spiritual Baptists used to use. It was really welcoming to see that they've gone back and using it. And we are continuing beautification. We just did some work at the Ediat Savannah, which is an area that is frequented by a lot of our citizens in the afternoon. That was launched and that was done. And we continue to do that around the country. So, I think awareness, Chairman, is the big deal, because the planet is really hurting. And I think not just the planet, but the food that we get also, because when we throw plastics on the beaches and it goes into the ocean and it goes into the fish, we then are eating things that are harmful to ourselves. So yes, that would be it.
Thank you very much for that. Member Lee. Oh, sorry. Member Cummings, Member Lee had his hand up, and then I will come to you straight after.
Sure.
Member Lee.
Thank you, Chairman Vera. Just to Mr. Eddy, one final question is: do you all have at the company a written policy of how contractors or / teams are distributed throughout Trinidad? A written policy document?
Well, in terms of, as I said, we give ourselves the flexibility with the contracts. We don't want to be too rigid so that we can move them as required, especially when we have natural disasters and things. It is important that we're able to move teams from wherever in the country that is necessary to provide the assistance that we need.
Well, I could see natural disasters being a one-off sort of item, but as far as where you place your contractors and your team, because it's over 9,000 employees, that will make up your 324 contractors based on the numbers that you gave me this morning. So, but there must, I don't know who makes that decision in the company that gets 24 or Siparia gets 10. There must be some rationale other than land mass, because it doesn't add up when I mean that with the fullest greatest of respect, Mr. Eddy. So I don't know, there must be some policy document in the company of how it's distributed fairly and equitable throughout Trinidad.
But I would also
assuming
say,
it-
remember, it is not just disaster, but you have to recognize that on a daily basis, we work with the Ministry of Works and Transport. So we move teams out of the communities onto the highways all the time. We're cleaning primary schools, we are cleaning sometimes high schools, we are cleaning churches, we are cleaning mosques. So it's really an operational thing, but I'll take a deeper look into it and see if I can.
Thank you. That's it for me, Chairman Vera.
Thank you. Member Cummings?
Chairman, we spent quite some time interrogating the CPEP Company Limited on some matters that concern the committee. At this point, what I'd like to do is to express what I've noticed as excellent work on the part of the CPEP Company Limited in terms of the work that they have been doing in terms of keeping the place clean. In my own experience, CPEP has been very helpful in clearing a lot of abandoned areas and cemeteries and so forth, and esteem the board of directors for the work that they've been doing. And also he mentioned that CPEP has basically taken over the payments of NIS for the contractors. I think that is a welcome initiative, and I want to commend them on that decision as well. So hats off to the CPEP team, Mr. Eddie, for the work that you all have been doing in relation to keeping the environment pristine, clean.
Thank you,
Chair.
Thank you, Member Cummins. And just another note, just a little plug for CPEP again also, is that remember we are also training these contractors. So we have done training for, I suspect, about close to 200 contractors, because we want when they leave the program, they can go out and become entrepreneurs themselves. So, there's a lot happening at the CPEP that we could just raise our hands and clap for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Member Cummings, is that it? Do you have any further comments or questions?
Not at this time, Chair.
Okay. Well, thank you. Well, if colleagues have no more questions, may I invite closing comments from the chief officials present? Starting with CPEP.
And I would start by simply saying we thankful for this opportunity from the committee to highlight, and I know we spent a lot of time on one of the issues, but there's a lot that CPEP is doing, and the protection of the environment is really, really critical to Trinidad and Tobago. We are helping some of the most vulnerable in society, and I think that should also be noted. So again, once again, thanks to the committee for highlight CPEP.
Chairman Michael?
Yes, again, I say thank you for this opportunity where we can come together as a team and showcase what we have been doing at CPEP publicly. Also, I must agree with what Mr. Eddie has said. We at CPEP, we are concentrating on ensuring that our mission and our vision is executed at all times. Thank you again.
Thank you. Ministry of Finance.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for inviting us to the meeting. We will continue to work with CPEP in compliance with the State Performance Manual and whatever issues the company has. Thank you.
And Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. It has been a worthwhile deliberation. A lot of very good ideas have been ventilated over the past couple hours, and it can only lead to improved relationship between head office and CPEP and improved performance of the state enterprise. Thank you again, everyone.
Well, I would like to thank all of you very much for your contributions today. They will certainly be very useful for this committee in its future work on the subject and in drawing up a report and recommendations for action to the relevant authorities. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our business today, and this meeting is now suspended. In closing, may I thank CPEP, the media, and the viewing and listening audience. Good day.
Good day.